Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm at AK Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 133. And this episode, we wanted to talk a little bit about and around strategy guides. And we've talked a little bit about that before, but this time we brought in some experts, some friendly, wonderful, weird experts. We are joined by friends of the podcast and of Prima Games, Jesse Vitelli and Lucas White. Mr. Vitelli, Mr. White, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. It's always a pleasure to chat with y'all and talk about the wonderful world of strategy guides.
You both also have graced our presence on several wonderful episodes of Side Quests. Lucas probably doing one of the more obscure games we've ever had on Side Quest, which was great because I learned all about a game I literally had no idea about.
Right.
And then Jesse also coming to me at some point and going, Matt, if I'm going to do any, it has to be about Viva Pinata because it's the best game ever.
Yeah, and Luigi's Mansion. Look, I'll sing the praises of both of those games any day.
Hell yeah.
The true goats, if you will.
And because I can't always remember how to pronounce it quite right, Lucas, what was the name of the game that you covered?
Void Terraria.
Void Terraria, right. Yes. Which actually added it to my wish list after you talked about it. Because I was like,
nice.
This sounds pretty cool. Of course,
And now there's a sequel coming out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I forgot about
As
that.
games are wont to do.
It got announced like not that long ago.
And then nothing since in true NIS style.
So we wanted to have you guys on because while we've talked about strategy guides before, the two of you wrote a strategy guide. You've been doing guides writing over at Prima Games for quite some time, but I have to imagine there's such a stark difference between, or maybe there isn't, between writing guides digitally and then writing it for a physical book. Did you have to go about it differently, or is the process kind of the same?
It's a lot more intense. Usually writing guides online, you're just taking a little piece of something and that's kind of your start and finish. Here it's oh God, we have to do everything. Anything we can think of, we have to put it in here.
Yeah, it was super daunting because like Lucas said, it's a lot of online guides writing is very targeted. It's we are answering this one very specific question and we are getting in and getting out as fast as possible. It is you do your intro, you answer the question up front so the person gets their answer, and then you put your backlinks in, you do your normal website stuff. But with this book, it was Lucas and I took a while to just sitting there being how do we want to break this up? Do you want to take half? Do I want to take half? The game, it's the collectibles, it's all of it in one big thing. And so organization is a big part of it in a way that online guide writing, unless you're doing very specific collectible guides, doesn't really have if you're not doing a full walkthrough. So it was a lot of figuring out exactly how do we tackle this thing starting at 0% and going through. And it took some time, but we got there.
Yeah, and it was really jumping in the deep end because it was a unreleased Metroidvania. So the questions even were what even does half of the game mean?
Yeah, and not having an online resource. They provided us with information as we requested it because this is a relationship where it benefits both of us to be in constant communication. But it was this weird thing. So we did both Axiom Verge 1 and 2 for this book. And so 1 is easy. That game's been out. I don't want to say easy. Easy is maybe not the right word. There's a lot of information about that game on the internet. So anything we needed to know, whether it was enemy names or whatever, we could look up and have a point of reference for, whether it be official sourcing or a wiki page or something, we could find the very specific thing we needed, right? But with 2, it was unreleased and currently in active development. So there was nothing. And so it was a lot of having to ask them for information or even a map. We were we just want to make sure we're not missing something because these games also have hidden secrets and stuff. And it's we've played a lot of this game and we've combed through everything, but there's always that thing in the back of your mind, did we miss something? Did we miss it? We have to so it was a lot of double and triple checking. Hey, speaking directly to the developer, are we good? Please, if there's some super secret thing you've hidden that you want in this book, you gotta let us know to make sure that we've got it.
Bring the assignment to the teacher. Did I do good?
Yes, please grade this and make sure that we have 101% because we need to make sure it's thorough.
I'm thinking of still putting some more stuff in here.
There was definitely a moment where the game, because we had like a pre-release build, not too dissimilar from like when you're reviewing a game and you get a review build early.
Of course.
But like there was definitely a moment where the game updated and we were like, what changed?
My percentage went down by like 3. Oh no.
What did you move? What did you add? What did you take away? Like, and so we emailed, we were like, hey, we just got an update. Like, did you move anything?
Because you also don't want to have obsolete information in your guide.
Exactly. So I do not recommend guiding a game in active development, but like it was an interesting. It was Lucas and I just talking all day. Like, what happened? What do we got to do now? What's going on? It was an interesting moment.
Hunting a target. Wow. How much lead time did you have for writing the guide versus the release?
That's a fun question.
Probably not a straightforward one.
So we didn't really have a deadline, so to speak. That said, Axiom 2 ended up being like a Nintendo Direct shadow drop.
Which we were not aware of.
Yeah. So it was like, oh, I mean, we don't have a release date yet. You guys can kind of take your time on it. And then it was like, snap. Actually, now it's time to like finish it.
Oops.
Oh, okay. I guess we'll, step on the gas now.
Yeah, it was this weird thing of like, we had an original timetable, and then a lot of it was we would write what we needed, and then we would talk to them. Then, email communication is not my favorite form of communication because it does take time, and somebody sees an email a day or two later. It was a whole thing, and like we had a great working relationship with them during the process. However, it was this thing of like, okay, like we should be done by here, and then like E3 happens, right? And then it's like everything gets a wrench tossed in it, and like it's like, okay, now we'll move the goalpost a little bit. And then even with Axiom Verge 2 like dropping when it did as a shadow drop, the book still had to go to the printer. Like the book only came out like a month ago, 2 months ago, roughly. And so like Axiom Verge 2 has been out for over a year at this point, and the first one's been out for multiple years. So like time wasn't really of the essence necessarily, because like the book still had to get printed and shipped and all this stuff. And so it was this sort of like neat collector's thing at the end of the day. Just fans of the game can now have like a physical Prima guide, which is cool. But it was an interesting sort of like, we're not really here for launch, because like we would have had to start this a year ago, like a year prior, if we wanted that to happen.
And it sounds like that would have been an even weirder process of trying to keep up.
For sure. I don't even think it would have been possible. And so, yeah, just, we were just kind of like, well, we're going to keep plugging away at this, and when it's ready, it's ready.
I'm curious what the division of labor was. Did each of you focus on one of the games, or did you both kind of work on both of the games?
If I remember right, I think we just sat and played Axiom through, and then we're just kind of like figured that out based on what the game was, really. Because I'd only played it like a little bit beforehand, and I don't believe Jesse played it at all.
I hadn't.
But like that game was pretty split into like different locations. Like it was really, there wasn't a ton of backtracking to it for like getting through the beginning to end. So we kind of were like, all right, let's take this section of the map. And I think it ended up changing a little bit by the time we were done. But then Axiom 2 was like, let's try this and see what happens.
I think we ended up with Axiom 2 doing like, I did the first half of the game, and like we made like an arbitrary like halfway point. I was like, okay, I'll do up until we get the spider robot jump ability or whatever, and then you'll take it from there. Whereas like you said, like with one, it would definitely was like, you'll take Ereboo and I'll take one of the other areas, like, and we'll each just kind of guide completely that area, all the collectibles. If you're getting something through like a backtrack part, which there's not a lot of it except for the collectibles, really. It'll be like, you'll just note like, oh, you'll come back through this area later at X. And so it was like, okay, there's 8 areas in the game. You take 4, I take 4. With Axiom 2, there's like so much going on that it was like, I'll just cover everything through the first half of the game, and you'll cover everything through the second half of the game. And then we'll take the weird spider robot dream world and we'll figure that out later.
Then we ended up kind of like meeting each other and still both having like so much crap that we just didn't find. So we kind of like sort of intersected and we're like helping each other out after a while.
Those upgrade vials. It was like, all right, I've got this one here, and like the map that they gave us was like this weird like overlay PNG, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what this map means that they gave us. And so it's like I have 3 monitors at my desk, and I have like 2 of them are just the map, and the other one is like the game, and we're recording like OBS videos of our playthrough one, so if we needed to like go back and watch something, like we don't have to go and replay the game a bit. I mean, we played it multiple times, but like we didn't have to, play it 100 times.
More
but then
efficiently, yeah.
also we wanted to we sent them a lot of our like game footage. So if they needed like screenshots or anything, because we also supplied screenshots and a bunch of other stuff. So a lot of the screenshots in that book are ours from our playthroughs. But like we sent them the video footage too. So like if they needed additional screenshots or whatever else, like they had all of that stuff with them. And so it was a lot of like rewatching video footage and being like, there, I need to go back there and like making a note, like, okay.
See, the thing about these games is like Axiom 1 is very much like, I'm doing a Metroid thing. And then 2 was like, I am an artiste and doing the Metroid thing. And so like the map in the first game is like, squares, and they're colorful squares.
Graph
and
paper.
There's like little, yeah. And then the second game was like, what if I took the actual environments and just smooshed them, and that was the map? And we didn't have a high resolution map until we were almost done. So there were parts where figuring out like, how do we even fill in this like corner of the space?
Yeah, it was like I can't jump high enough or like grapple or whatever, and it's like me spending 20 minutes just trying to like get this one pixel on the map filled in to make sure that there wasn't like something in that little pixel. Yeah, I forgot about that, and
Yeah,
I don't want to remember.
Do you guys have a broad idea of how many hours you put into both games?
I'm going to take this moment to say, and this might be controversial, and I apologize. I don't like the Epic Games Store because it doesn't give you an accurate hour count of your progress like Steam does.
Yeah.
Right, sure.
I have no idea how. I mean, there's like a percentage in time at the end of the game when you beat it, or maybe when you in the pause menu.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to load that game back up to find out, but it was a lot.
You're done with it now. The book's out.
Both those games are uninstalled, and not because I dislike them. I actually think they are both they're very fun. If you're a fan of the genre, I highly recommend. However, we have put so much time into those games. I'm good.
Yeah.
If a 3 comes out, maybe, but I'm good.
I want to say like 2 was like roughly 8 hours the first time. But I'm pretty sure I played start to finish at least 5 times, if not more. I want to say I broke 100 hours, but I don't remember exactly. But it was a lot.
I mean, you probably replayed those games more than you've ever replayed any other game.
Anything ever. Yeah.
I don't replay games, and I replayed that game so many times.
I'm curious, Lucas, how this experience was a little different from Scott Pilgrim, which was a re-release of a game that had been out for a while and then delisted. Were you given the similar kind of resources for that because the game wasn't currently actively available when you were guiding it?
If I remember right, the game had already come out again at this point. So I had actually already like had a copy for reviewing it, which was kind of weird because I was like, is this a conflict of interest just because the timing was weird? But I know I had like specifically like, hey, can you do this in 2 weeks?
Jeez.
And my answer was like, of course.
Because that's what you say.
But like, luckily it's a pretty simple game.
Yeah.
You know, it's a 2D brawler, and not that like it being 2D means anything, Axiom Verge 2, but this is basically like a River City Ransom homage.
Yeah.
So it was pretty easy to just go through and screenshot almost the entire game and just be like, here's where the door is. There's like 2 doors in this level. So finding things wasn't that bad. If anything, it was like, what is there of substance to say about some of this game? Because I'm just punching everything.
Right.
What lore drops matter here? What?
Yeah.
Yeah, now that you mention it, it makes sense. Yeah, 2D game makes it a lot easier as far as camera angles for screenshots. Because if you're trying to get secret doors or weird ledges in a 3D game, you can show what it is. But if someone never turns the camera that way, sometimes the horse doesn't even find the water.
It's true.
Yeah, I don't want to imagine guiding something more substantial before it's out.
Well,
you know?
I will say, I will let y'all in on a little funny story. When we got pitched the Axiom Verge 1 and 2 guides,
Yeah.
let me take this back a little bit. Lucas and I received an email from one of our bosses at our old company. It was like, hey, we got this really cool opportunity. Limited Run wants to work with us. They want to write a Prima game. They want us to write a guide for Astral Chain 1 and 2. And Lucas and I immediately, we've never been more in sync in our entire life. And Lucas and I are in sync a lot. We were like, they're making an Astral Chain 2? We were like, well, yes, obviously, yes. We're like, we don't know how we're going to do this, but yeah, we want to do it. And so we got into the meeting with our boss to discuss. And we were like, Astral Chain 2 hasn't even been announced. I've never heard a whisper of this. Is this a real thing? And our boss was like, oh, maybe I got the game wrong. And then looked up the email and was like, oh, Axiom Verge 1 and 2. And we're like, this makes so much more sense. We're like, yeah, we'll do it, obviously. But we were like, what?
You brought us in on Platinum Dreams, you cad.
It was so funny. But Lucas and I were DMing each other. We're like, what? Yeah, heck yeah. Whoa, this is what is going on?
Incredible.
Did you know that there was an Axiom Verge 2 at the time either?
Yes, they had already announced that.
They had announced it
yeah.
at that point. Okay. Yeah, I'm curious because so for the physical guide, it sounds like it was a lot more intense and a lot more focused. But y'all have done a countless amount of guides that I've utilized myself on primagames.com.
Word.
More specifically, Jesse's Destiny content before the newest expansion, when they had those daily, you could do these weekly things to discover the lore. I would just wake up and be
the
Jesse,
Atlas SKUs.
the Atlas SKUs. I'd be like, Jesse, did you write your Atlas SKUs guide yet? I need to get it. Often running it with Jesse sometimes while he was.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. Every time I'm like, man, they're right. I'm standing next to it. Come over here. I gotta take this screenshot. Hold on.
But I have to imagine the bite-sized stuff being a lot easier. Do you guys kind of get to pick and choose what you're guiding these days?
The content kind of dictates the guide.
Yeah.
Live service will always be king in that realm. Anything with a battle pass, anything with a seasonal model, new maps, that kind of stuff. It really depends. Your live service games are going to get you through the week. Your big releases, yeah, your live service games are kind of going to be your sort of lifeblood until a big release, and then you'll get a spike, and then you'll move on. You'll do your next thing. So recently, it's been Disney Dreamlight Valley, just for an example. That is a perfect example of a game that just has endless stuff to talk about, even if it is incredibly simple.
Yeah.
That's the weirdest thing that I had to get used to, because I've been doing this thing for almost 12 years at this point, but I never touched guide writing. I remember when I was applying to Prima, I was just like, oh God, I got to shoot my shot, but I've never written a guide. So I was at Siliconera at the time. So I was just like, Jesus, Dragalia Lost, I'm playing that. Here's how to do some stuff. And, shot that over to Leanna real quick. And so I don't personally usually need guides for games.
Pro gamer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The best.
And so I really had no idea what to expect once I was actually in it. And I remember, I think it was when Shredder's Revenge came out. And we have this thing where the SEO folks at the company will toss in stuff they see popping up on Google Trends or whatever. And I'm just like, y'all really need me to write is TMNT Shredder's Revenge co-op? Is this really a thing that I have to dedicate time to? And they were like, That's what the people want, man.
Gotta find where to find the diaries and the frogs.
Yeah. I did all that, and I don't even know if it was worth doing compared to like, what are the controls?
That's true.
It's an interesting thing because you have to constantly underestimate humanity.
Oh no.
Just truly, you have to just be like, they're gonna Google the most simple of things, and like the more difficult guides too are important, like the collectibles and the sort of like actual information that like higher level players would need. But like, you'd be surprised the mileage you can get out of something as simple as like, here are the controls for this video game, and it's like, you can hit the pause button and see this information, but like, people are just gonna Google it on their phone and it'll do numbers, and you're just like, okay, sure. It's bizarre.
I mean, as
Why not?
someone who has recently started his adventure from the beginning of playing the Shantae games, I'd played Half Genie Hero, but now I'm starting from the first two releases. I did, while playing the first game, Google how to use items, because in that game, it doesn't explicitly tell you, except maybe when you first get an item, and an IGN guide on how to use items in the original Shantae Switch port came up. So like, they got my click because I couldn't figure it out.
That's another interesting like facet of guides writing, is like, there's like a bunch of like, I think like tiers to guide writing, right? There's like your super simple answers that like you normally don't go for immediately because they seem super obvious, and then they start popping up on like Google Trends or something, and you're like, okay, all right, put that
Every
in the
game
pile.
is someone's first game.
Yeah, put that in the pile. And then there's like your mid-tier guys, which are like is this thing hidden behind more than one menu? Like, is this thing just easily missable? Or like, I remember when Monster Hunter Rise came out, we got code for that like the day before release. And so I was like, I don't really have a lot of time to write a bunch of guides, but I can get out some early stuff that I think people will encounter like as they log in and start playing.
Yeah, getting started.
Yeah. And so one of the things I discovered was like, because when you get like review code, like sometimes they'll give you like the super fancy special edition or digital deluxe edition or whatever. And so it came with like a bunch of like free items and like armor and stuff. And I couldn't figure out how to claim the reward. And I found it was like you had to talk to this one character and then select a certain menu option, and then it showed up in like your chest, like across the map. So I was like, oh, this is an easy guide because it's multiple things and like the game isn't clear about sending it to you, but it's a very simple concept. And I wrote that guide.
It needs to be written.
Yeah, and it like immediately popped off when the game released because everyone was going through the same thing of like, how do I claim the thing I paid for? So it's like that level of like, it's slightly obscure. It's not super difficult, but like it's unintuitive in the game. So like, let's just lay it out clearly. And then there's like your super end game, like here's all the collectibles, here's how to beat this super hard boss, here's secrets you might have missed, or like a true ending or something like that. But you don't really need to worry about that stuff until players are getting closer to actually encountering that. So if you're playing 100-hour RPG, when players log on Friday morning when the game comes out, they're not going to see that content for weeks maybe. And so you don't, you have to kind of pick and choose what to put up like at first.
Jesse, having a window into your life, being friends in actual life and talking on Discord often, I did get to see the, let's say, minor difficulty you had of guiding Elden Ring earlier this year. And so, like, I want to talk a little bit. So for context for the listener, like I would hang out with Jesse on Discord often when I was working from home. And like there was one day where I'm with Jesse and maybe Eric and a few others, and we're hanging out. And I know Jesse's playing the game. He's working on the guides. And I just hear Jesse go, "There's another damn map." When he discovered, I think, the underground map. And so like, talk a little bit about the scope of going through that versus the day-to-day kind of like 8 to 10 hour experience. It must be kind of crazy making at one point because you just don't know, especially that early on, like what you're even looking for.
Elden Ring broke me in ways video games have not broken me before.
Oh, man.
Like, I remember months before that came out, Lucas Morgan and I were like, who's reviewing this? Who's tackling this one? Because we were all like,
I was like, nah,
and then
I ain't touching this.
By the time it came out, Morgan had gone over to Shack News, and so it was just Lucas and I. And I was like, I'll do it. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's go for it. Let's take this challenge head on. Let's just go. we got horrendous lead time on that thing, and then most of the guides for that game were like well after launch because just there wasn't time. And it was one of those things of like that is a guide gold mine, and every video game website saw that. Like Elden Ring did numbers for months after launch. Like that game was one of the biggest games this year, and like guiding it was easy and difficult because it was like it's easy because it's like everything in that game is a guide. Like
You can use every part of the buffalo on that game.
Yes, 100%. Like it is truly just an obtuse game for a lot of reasons. But then also it is like an incredibly difficult game. It's approachable more so than in some other of FromSoft's games. However, physically getting to locations was a chore. And I enjoyed the game. I loved the game. I gave it a 9.5 on primagames.com. However, it just it was emotionally draining and mentally taxing in a way that like I don't think a video game has ever done to me. And I loved it. But like I took vacation after that.
Yeah.
Like I took like comp days, right? Because like I spent so much of that time, my time reviewing that game and doing stuff for it. I was like, I'm taking like 2 days. I'm taking a long weekend. I'll see you. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
That game was just like a perfect storm.
Truly.
Like it was really popular. It was approachable, quotation marks, and there was just a ton of it. And I just remember like I wasn't really sure if I was interested in it or not at all. But then like guides just kept coming out because like Jesse had it because he had our code, and then another guy had just bought it, and it was just like stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff. And I was just like, man, I should probably just get this game just for work. 200 hours later, I think I ended up being the crazy person who was like finding just as much weird garbage as possible. And like Jesse was saying, I've never felt more like confused emotionally about a video game before. And I'm not even sure if it was the work aspect. That game just sort of like washed over everything like a tidal wave.
Yeah.
And I remember just when I was finally like, okay, I think I'm done. I just couldn't. I had this feeling and I just couldn't give it words. I still don't know if I actually like that game or not.
That's the weird thing. You spend so much time guiding a game and you're like, I don't even know if I like this game. But like, that's the job. That's just what it is. It's like sometimes you play the game you don't want to play and you end up having 200 hours in it and you're like, did I have fun at any point throughout this?
Yeah, for me, I know like, okay, I don't like this game and I'm pissed off that I'm playing it so much. Tower of Fantasy is a dark time in my life.
Oof.
But Elden Ring is just like, ugh.
I'm reminded of, being an actor and working on shows where, do you like the show? Would you recommend the show? But it just it becomes just another weird coworker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, like Elden Ring specifically, like Jesse watched and encouraged my journey. I played Dark Souls 3 like maybe a month before Elden Ring came out, and like a couple weeks into Elden Ring's release, and really liked it. Like I used some mods, but like mostly just stuff to give me a tiny bit of a cushion while I got my ass kicked thoroughly in the game. And then like after hearing Jesse and Eric Van Allen talk about it a lot, because they were both working on the game, I was like, do I want to play this game? Almost as if I were brainwashed in the same way like Lucas was talking about, like, do I want to play this? Is this a game I want to play? And then again, 140 hours later, with the help of one Glenn, the king among men on the internet, amongst many gaming communities, helped me on almost every single boss battle on that game. Like even the final boss battle I beat because he brought himself and a friend and we're like, yeah, we'll just own it for you. Don't worry. And like we still barely beat it. And I, like Lucas, am like, did I enjoy this? I think for a while I was like, I think this is my game of the year. Is that weird? Because it felt like such a strange experience. I mean, it's since been dethroned by Citizen Sleeper and Live Alive, or Live Alive, however you pronounce it. But like for a while I was like, is a Souls game, is Elden Ring my game of the, do I like these games now? And like I've installed Bloodborne I installed Bloodborne on my PS5 ages ago. I was like, I'm going to play this one. And then like I booted it up and I went, I'm not going to play this one because I was just like, I just
Yeah.
don't have the time.
Hey, you did 2 of them this year. Like, you're
I
good.
did.
You hit your
Yeah,
quota.
I think I can wait on another Souls-like for a while. I haven't even finished Stray, and that's like 4 hours long. So like,
And that's a fun one.
It's a good one.
For me, like, I always feel weird bringing this up, but it just comes up anyways. I have like pretty nasty ADHD, and specifically, one of the ways it really hits me with games is like my sense of direction and navigation, like ability to remember where things are. So that's always really been my big roadblock for Souls games. It's like, oh man, I love this combat. I'm playing Bloodborne, and it's just like I can't find my way around this game at all. And then Elden Ring was like, here's that, but like in little chunks. And there's a map, and it's not a great map, but it's enough of a map.
yeah.
And so it was like just enough stuff that I was able to like keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Plus like the really fun gameplay loop. And it was just like, oh, okay, now this game is doing the opposite and I can't stop playing.
Like you become strangely obsessed with it. Like I remember I would like put it down and then be like I would die for the 4th time on the same boss and put my controller down and be like, I'm done. I'm never playing this game again. I'm so frustrated.
15 minutes later.
Yeah, I would walk back and
Back
literally
on
sit
it.
down and sign back on Discord, and they'd be like, back at it. I'm like, shut up. Yeah, I'm gonna try the boss again. Like it was just there's something weird about the gameplay loop that really made it satisfying in a way that I feel like other games didn't. I'm curious though, like you both have talked a little bit about the challenging experiences. Is there a specific game that you're really loving every aspect of guiding? Is there like one game that you're like, I guided this game for release or like just after release that I've just loved the whole experience?
Final Fantasy 14.
Oh, right. Of course.
Anytime I get to guide 14, anytime there's a new content drop, it's like, I love this game. I love playing it. It's super easy to get screenshots. Gpose is an amazing tool. I'm going to play this content anyway. Like, it's just like the perfect marriage of like what I use my free time for and like work. And now it just like blends together and it's super easy.
I feel like I've called out Jesse multiple times on this podcast for infecting me and Eric Van Allen with the love of that game.
Do you know who infected me?
Who?
Lucas.
Oh, really? Oh, that's amazing.
Lucas is the source of all of this.
Well, it's only a matter of time before I do, so I'll trace it back to you. You can be my great-great-grandsire on this one.
Heck yeah.
I'm not even caught up myself anymore. Jesse has surpassed me.
Lucas did the like, oh, Endwalker's coming out. I'm going to mainline so much of 14. And like when we used to do our weekly live streams, we had a segment called Gas Me Up because it was games as a service. And it would just be our weekly check-in with like whatever live service game we were playing. And Lucas always brought 14, and Lucas always had something interesting to say about 14. I specifically remember, I think you were going through the Deltascape stuff at the time, because you were like, oh, there's this whole area where you like fight old Final Fantasy bosses, and it's like all contextualized in this like simulation. It's like, damn, I should get back to this game. I want to fight the Ghost Train. I've since fought the Ghost Train. It's an excellent fight. And then some stuff happened, whatever. We ended up having a lot of free time around the holidays, and I just pushed through 14 to the point where I think I tweeted like, oh, I think I'm going to finish Endwalker tonight. And Lucas is like, how did you pass me? Lucas is like, I had like months of lead time on you.
Obsessively, that's how.
I mean, that's what Eric pretty much did to me. Like, I was ahead of him in A Realm Reborn for quite a while, and then I started playing other games, and Eric's like, I think I'm just going to see my way all the way to Endwalker in 4 months or whatever nonsense it was, and I'm still in Heavensward, enjoying every minute of that game when I have time to play it, but like, I was just like, I can't do it. I need breaks.
Definitely a commitment.
Now, an interesting, I guess, ecosystem thing of guide writing that, you know, something like games of service, Final Fantasy 14, Destiny, any of those, you are naturally going to be like, here are the updates, here's the things that's going on. But something like Elden Ring definitely stood out because it feels like, despite being a massive game, something of an older kind of game where I have so many of my old strategy guides, what I treasure and that I refer to, even sometimes through remasters. When I played through Final Fantasy 10 and 10-2 with my spouse, we used a combination of online guides, probably something on Prima, and the physical guides from the old ones to get us through. What do you think of viability or anything? I'm not saying you should. I'm just in professional opinion, viability of something like a tome that is the guide to something like Elden Ring? Is that possible? Like a larger single-player experience, but probably still gets a bunch of updates.
That's a great question. I think like Final Fantasy 14 is probably weirdly I don't want to call it like the answer to your question, but it's barely multiplayer. You know what I mean? Like it is,
True.
it is, and especially as like time has gone on, they've put more and more stuff in to make it like a solo game. So that's kind of cheating, but I don't think single player games have managed to figure that out. I think there were a lot of like attempts to do that, especially like last generation, but it just seems like it doesn't really work. Like you just can't make a AAA game and pump out content for it at the same pace as like a game that's got like a smaller budget but is focused on just pumping stuff out constantly. You end up with like your 3 big DLC packs and then it's over.
Okay, so it's still localized enough that if one wanted to, we are long past the time of every big game gets a physical guide published for it. But it's kind of, do you think it is settled to a point where if some independent house was like, I'm going to like limited run, but only for strategy guides.
Gotcha, okay.
Like, would that come out and then you wouldn't have to like print a redaction or like an addendum every other week on it because some patch happened? Not even DLC, but just like the strategy used to work. Not absolute virtue levels of we've changed things all the time to make an FF11 reference, but I don't know.
No, I get what you're saying.
It's interesting because like, so you think about limited run, right? And like they've worked with us for the Prima guides, but they've also kind of done some of their own smaller sort of tips and tricks and stuff that come in like some of their fancy editions.
Of course.
I think it works as a collector's item. I don't think it works as like a wholesale. Like you'll never see strategy guides the way you saw them, where they're just like every game has one. There's 50 copies just sitting there. Like,
yeah,
that just doesn't work anymore. I mean, even magazines for the most part are like subscription based and like they don't stock them.
I live in an apartment. I get it.
Yeah,
I can only have so many
exactly.
physical things.
And so I think strategy guides, especially Prima ones, or any sort of like branded one that like people remember, sort of live in this interesting space of like they're a great collector's item. They're great. Like they take a lot of time, and it's something that like you will not have this for launch. Like it just doesn't work that way. I don't even really know how it worked when those guides were coming out, when the games came out.
When?
Like I like game development and like what we went through, like it never adds up. So I don't know how something like that would ever work. But as a collector's item, like, yeah, I think you could see like an Elden Ring, I think is kind of a good example, because like that game's, like Lucas said, that game's content will eventually end. It will eventually sort of wrap up its content cycle and they will move on to the next thing. And so you could do some sort of thing around that. How much value does that have? That's just up to collectors and people that like stuff like that. And like that market is always sort of in flux. So it's kind of hard to gauge, like, is that worth the investment? Like between how much you have to pay for the writers and printing the book, and a game like that is going to be hundreds of pages. Like for reference, the Axiom Verge 1 and 2 book is like 212 pages. Elden Ring's going to be 500 easy. And so what does that look like? How much does it cost? Like if you're printing a 500 page book in color with pictures and stuff, that's hundreds of dollars
Maps,
for somebody.
screenshots. You have to have maps drawn up now, because 3D maps, it's not just like stitched together pixels so that you know what the dungeon looks like.
So there's a lot of like weird things you get into with stuff like that.
And to your point, Elden Ring did get like some pretty significant like tweaks and stuff after it came out.
Different weapons are totally like viable now, and weapons that were
balance issues is really that's the like
not the king anymore.
Yeah. I think of the sort of a weird, like, I don't know, crossover point for me in my head is something like Diablo 2.
Yeah.
That is a game from a time where you would get a physical guide. I think I have a Prima strategy guide for Diablo 2. But since that was written, there's been some weird content updates. Skill synergies weren't a thing then. There's been other things that have been added because that game exists. I'm not doing this as like a gotcha or anything. I'm enjoying this as a discussion point. Now, on a sillier flip side of things, is there a game that either of you just pie in the sky wish had a limited run style or whatever, a collector's item strategy guide out there? Like, what would you want on your shelf?
Oh.
Because I'm also imagining like a Wizard's Tome binding for Elden Ring. Like, I don't know, screw it. Make it leather collector's item. If you're going to sell it to collectors for $150 anyway, fuck
The
it.
Elden Ring Bible, like just like it's just bad. It's in every hotel you go and you open the drawer. It's just in there. Like,
Are you maidenless? Here.
oh man, that's a good question. Lucas, do you have one?
There's so many games out there that I love and that I would love to work on. And Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth.
That's a good
There
one.
you go.
That's a good pick.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I'm gonna just go Outer Wilds. I think you could do some really neat stuff
Yeah.
with that. I think like I have the not to get too off topic. I have the vinyl record of Outer Wilds, and they like the inside is like scribbled notes and like fake post-its and stuff, and it's like a log of like the traveler's adventure. I think you could do some real real sweet stuff with like it being sort of like a notebook that people have like scribbled in, and you could do some really interesting like aesthetic work with a thing like that, and the cover would look super nice. Like, and I also just love that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that shit I'm talking about. Where, yeah, I feel like some of the physical collectors things that exist now are kind of where old instruction manual instincts go, where
Yeah.
here's some verisimilitude
Yeah.
of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thanks to one Josh Silverman, former guest of this very podcast, sent me all 3 Mass Effect strategy guides, Prima guides. And like, those things are awesome. And like, if I
yeah.
could
They're so
have,
fun.
and like to have those in my collection is kind of a dream because I still have my Super Mario RPG Nintendo Power Strategy Guide. But like, I would love some of the indie games that have come out over the years. Like, I know for me and Geoff, if there was a Shovel Knight Treasure Trove strategy guide of all the games, including the most recent one, King of Cards, and all that, would be really dope to have on my shelf. Or now that I'm playing through the Shantae games, like a Shantae guide collection or something. But I agree with what Jesse said. I think they're more collector's items because, like, if I could Google everything or flip through 100 pages, typing into Google is
Yeah.
definitely a lot easier. And so, like, especially if I've had that question, like to both of your points, then Google Trends has that question, right? Because I'm not the first person to think of it. So for me, it would always be, obviously I'm not writing any of them, but if I could have one, it would be for stuff that I just want to have on myself. Like, oh, this is cool. Or look at the art. Like I haven't played Axiom Verge 1 or 2 yet. I started Axiom Verge 1, but I'm going to play through both of them using the guide for the novelty and for the fun. But I know there are going to be moments where I'm like, where is this in the guide? Fuck it. I'm just going to go to
Yeah.
Google, you know, because it's just the simplicity of it.
I'll definitely say as a user of guides and one who most of my RPG experience of the past few years playing with my spouse is she's holding the controller and I am playing Navigator, where I've had our Final Fantasy X 10-2 experience was I had my laptop in my lap and the whichever guide like open. And I say there's advantages to both. I am also a very ADHD human and a very like tactile human. So knowing where I can flip in the guide to know how far into the game I am is super useful. I got very used to like, I need to look up the enemy's weaknesses. Like I would, without looking, get within a page of wherever that enemy was in the bestiary because I learned and I knew probably faster than my very crappy Chromebook could, control F through the GameFAQs guide or IGN or Prima or any of those other ones. I'm also running into right now, we're playing Final Fantasy V on the PS1. I know it's the worst version. This is what we've got. And we're having a great time. That one doesn't have a ton of authoritative guides on it.
That sounds about right.
No, and especially that version. So I'll look up things and it's like, oh, that's super easy. Use the Cannoneer job. That's only the Game Boy Advance version. do you know what I have?
The anthology
And-
version, baby.
Anthology loading times. Jesus. So I guess I'm saying something for, I understand the lead time and the insanity and we can't go back to what that was, but I guess that just makes me treasure the physical strategy guides that I do have and excited for the ones that do come out when they do. But not every game deserves it. Not every game needs
That is
it.
also
But
true.
sometimes it feels real
Yeah.
Yeah,
nice.
just like thinking about it more. Like I love Cyber Sleuth, but that's also kind of a joke for me. But
Fair.
Fangamer put out this like guide for Earthbound. I didn't even call it a guide. It was like the Earthbound like travel handbook or something. And it's a walkthrough, but it's also almost like presented like some kind of like atlas or travel guide, and it's awesome. And I think that like going backwards and like finding those like classic games on older systems and stuff and just giving them like that kind of this thing from the past is awesome and cool, and we have all this nostalgia for it. Let's turn that energy into a book that's it's technically a guide, but it's a guide second and like a celebration of this game first. If someone were to call me up and be like, "Hey, we're gonna do this, but for like Dragon Quest V," I'd be like, "Are you God?"
Yeah, I was gonna say that is like a very Lucas specific. Like, it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna do Dragon Quest V, and you're like, I was like, I got the perfect person. Don't worry, go get him.
You've already opened the Word document, and there's so much already written.
In fact, Lucas just has it on his hard drive. It's already done. Fun fact.
He's done the guide. He just needs someone to publish it.
GameFAQs isn't ready for this shit.
Nope.
Before we go, I'm curious, before both of you got hired to do guides writing, Lucas touched on this a little bit, but had you even thought about guide writing at all as like a job? Like, I know that both of you have worked within the journalism space for a while, working for several sites, writing news and reviews. So that's kind of been something you've been doing longer, but like for guides specifically, was this like, yeah, this thing I'm using to figure out games as a kid, I'm going to write one of those one day? Like, did you ever think you'd have a printed book?
No.
Definitely not.
Like no to everything you just said. I had done guides work prior to Prima, but like
Yeah.
I just figured that was like, I enjoy doing it. You know, it's work that always needs to be done one way or another. I prefer guides work to news writing as sort of the like day-to-day stuff. Like I like news writing, don't get me wrong, but like there's something about guides writing that's like very easy for me to just like hone in on it and like, okay, this is the game I'm working on today. Let me figure out what I'm doing for the rest of the day. But no, I never thought I'd have a printed book. No, I never thought this would be my gig. Like it just, like everyone's industry story, it is weird and wild and different, and everyone just ends up in a spot where they're like, I don't know how I got here, but we're gonna ride this ride.
But this rules.
100%. Yeah.
It sounds like your experience was kind of similar, Lucas.
Yeah. I mean, I barely was aware of guides writing as like a institution, especially on the level like it is right now. I sort of like was aware of it in the periphery. But like I said, I usually don't need guides that much as a player, so it's just like not something on my mind.
Pro gamer.
Yeah, you know,
Lucas White,
100% in Castlevania Rondo of Blood.
Lucas the other day you said something, you were like, if I can't beat this, then like you got to take my pro gamer card away, and because you were working on a guide and you're like, if I can't get through this, we're in trouble.
Yeah,
I don't remember what it was.
Soul Hackers thing.
Yeah.
I couldn't find.
It was like a puzzle, yeah.
For the life of me. But yeah, I never would have considered guides at all being a thing I would ever touch, even years and years into my career. I've always been like, I want to talk about how this game makes me feel. And when it's like, how do I find a thing? I'm like, I don't care. I probably didn't find that thing. I probably ran by it on purpose. And so getting sort of adjusted to that mindset of like, I'm playing a game for review, I should also probably maybe take a note or two for guides that I probably need to write. It's just a whole new thing for me.
And I'm the opposite. Like, I mean, I've reviewed plenty of games in my day. Lucas handles a lot, like all of our review stuff. That is Lucas's wheelhouse. And I'm always just like, hey, Lucas, did you get code for this thing yet? I'm just the person that bothers Lucas for code. But like, as time went on, I think Elden Ring may have been like the sort of tipping point for me where I was just like, I'm okay. I'd much rather just guide a game. I think that's like where my brain has always kind of been. And I noticed this more and more as like I instinctually screenshot tooltips. I instinctually screenshot when a game is explaining something to me. When a game is like, okay, here is how You purchase items, even if it's the simplest thing. I just screenshot it. Like, I don't even think about it anymore. I'm just like, if you look through my Switch screenshots for Splatoon right now, it's all incredibly basic information. And then just like anytime I find anything that might be of value, I just screenshot. And then I often forget about it until like I need it for something. But like, that's how my brain works.
Right.
So like it's the opposite of Lucas is like, all right, I'm reviewing this game. Like maybe I should take a note. And I'm like, I'm not even thinking about how this game makes me feel right now. I am just taking notes on the most.
You're photo rolling a proto strategy guide already.
Like it is no thoughts, head empty. Like that is like literally like my experience with games now. Is just like after Elden Ring, I was like, I need to just not have a critical opinion on a video game for a long time. And like I've reviewed games since then, and I've had plenty of critical opinions, but like it has just become so easy to be like, okay, I eat food by cooking it with Remy from Ratatouille. And this is how I make ratatouille. Got it. Perfect.
That was a necessary guide.
Disney Dreamlight Valley's got some real obtuse stuff for no good reason in it.
It's funny. I haven't played it yet, but I saw your weird cartoon version of yourself.
Oh, what did Lucas say I look like? It was a Will Wheaton. Someone did a fusion dance.
Will Wheaton and a McElroy brother.
And Lucas said I looked like not Lucas. Eric said I looked like Greg Miller. I was like, damn! I thought I made myself. Do I just look like every other bearded white dude? Kind of.
Maybe.
It's fair to say.
Yeah, it's something I honestly like struggle with. Like listening to Jesse say that, it makes me think of like recently that article on Waypoint about like guides writers not getting enough respect, not getting enough pay, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy, especially coming so far ahead of like when that stuff was as important as it is now, to be kind of dismissive of it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And finding myself having to do that work now it's a real struggle for me emotionally. And there's also like an element of guilt to it, because it's like an article like that comes out about how like people who actually enjoy doing this work aren't getting like the spotlight they should be. And I'm sitting here like whining about it internally and kind of coming to terms with like, okay, I got to do my time here. I got to figure out like what I need to do to get that stuff so I can do the stuff I'm actually interested in. And it's like, damn, I'm complaining about something people would kill for, but at the same time, like there's people who also like want to do this stuff, and they're like the people keeping the lights on. So much respect for people who like jump on a game and have like 10, 20 articles about it guide-wise, like day one. It's just like, I can't comprehend being able to do that, much less enjoying it. So just, like props to everyone who does that. My personal feelings has nothing to do with the quality of your work. It's just me being grumpy.
Lucas says all of this and then continues to write some of the funniest guides you'll ever read. Some of the funniest writing I have read in this industry comes straight out of Lucas, when Lucas is like, because you will write a guide and you will do the work, you will do the research, it will be accurate, and you are also just like ripping on it in the funniest of ways, in the slightest of asides and the slightest of just like parentheses, like, I know Daddy Google sent you here. Like I got it. I can see what you're looking for. Like it's you have found a very good way to sort of inject a lot of those feelings into your work in a way that I don't think other writers are doing, and it is very good. It is very, very good, and I always appreciate it when I'm like, oh, I can read a guide on this dumb question that we all know is silly, but y'all are looking at it, and Lucas is gonna call you out for it, but also give me the information you came for. This isn't just like a joke. Like Lucas has got the goods, but gonna be like, really? This is what you're asking? Is Walter White in multiverses? Really? This is the question you're asking?
So it's that mocking page in the Choose Your Own Adventure book. You
Yeah.
ended up here. All right.
I mean, I've said to both of you before that you've written reviews and guides that have gotten me to want to play games. I mean, I talked about Jesse's Elden Ring experience, but Lucas, when he wrote his review of Shin Megami Tensei 5, after I read it and talked to him a bunch about like what's the difficulty really like. Some people are saying it's more portable or not. It made me go buy the game. Now it's irrelevant whether I've played it or not yet, 'cause the answer is no.
Right.
But your writing encouraged me to buy that game, and I'm so grateful for the work that both of you do over at Prima, because I feel like more than a lot of other writers, and we're friends with a lot of other writers who also do incredible work, but I think that whole generation of like both of you, Ken Shepard, Eric Van Allen, and more, write reviews in a way that make the games just feel approachable. Even when Lucas is being a snarky pain in the ass, he's not pushing me away from it. He's still like, there's still a warmth to that writing. And Jesse, of course, your guides and stuff and reviews that you've done, like, I know where you're at with the game. What was the game that I played with the crow?
Death's
I
Door.
can't remember the name now. Death's Door. Your review of Death's Door immediately got me to buy it and tell Geoff about it, because the way you talked about how much you really enjoyed the core of that game and like where it took you was like, oh, I have to play this game, and I ended up loving it. And so thank you from both of us for doing the work that you do, because it makes me want to engage with a lot of the content I might have otherwise overlooked.
Yeah, I got the physical game, and it's now in my have you played it yet? Don't ask me that question. Backlog. I'm excited about it when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, we're all happy to be here, and like as easy as it is to be cynical, and easy as it is for me to be like, yeah, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be writing about whatever this game is. It's like that's, I can still find a way to have fun doing what I'm doing, and not like take it out on the audience, unless it's Honey Pop, which I totally took it out on the audience, but that was a long time ago. Yeah, like it's a very unique position to be in, and just finding the ways to make sure you're still having a good time, I think, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopping on a new release, whether you're interested in the game or not, is always a stressful time, even for people who love writing guides. Like, it's stressful. There's a lot of information. It's a lot of sensory overload. It's a lot of menus. It's a lot of getting stuff out as fast as you can. And so it's like always making sure, like, hey, drink water, take breaks, like walk away from your computer if you need to, like take the time. Like, we are lucky enough to have now a bigger team than we used to. And so it's like, if you can't do this one thing, like one of us can grab it. It's fine. Like, please, like, make sure you go do what you got to do and come back. And like, we're all in this together. And we're very lucky to have like a very supportive team, and very like, there's a lot of great writers and just great people at Prima that like, we're all working together. Like, sometimes work's not always fun. That's every job. But then like, you cherish the moments where it's like, no, I actually get to, like what I said earlier, like I cherish the moments that like a 14 content comes out. I'm like, I can just pour all of my love for this game into my writing and into my work, and I know this game inside and out. As Michael Heim would say, my third eye is opened. Like I can see what I need to see in that game and get it all together. And so
known Rowlet lover Michael
known
Heim.
Rowlet, Kirby,
This man's
Cat.
on the Island Sanctuary going ultra instinct.
Hey, I'm almost level 10. I think if I harvest my crops today, I maxed Island Sanctuary. But yeah, it is just, Lucas and I are on this podcast right now talking about guides writing, and we have done a lot of work for Prima for years. But our managing editor, Meg, is fantastic, and the freelancers we have are great, and we have a really supportive team, and it makes our lives easier in the sense that like sometimes when we don't know what we need to do, there is somebody there to point us in the right direction. And sometimes we don't always love that direction, but it's work and it gets done. And so we do what we got to do.
Incredible.
Thank you both so much for joining us. This was such a wonderful and elucidating and charming conversation. Before we wrap up, please tell folks, I guess starting with Lucas and then Jesse, where they can find you online, where they can find your work online, the best way to read your writing, besides, of course, at primagames.com, and stuff that maybe you've got going on or coming up that you're excited to share with folks as it comes out.
Prima's all I got, man. I dropped everything else. I'm on Twitter. I'm Hokuto no Lucas, like Fist of the North Star. I'm a nerd. I hang out there fairly often. As far as what's coming up, I'm playing catch up with a lot of reviews big time. I've got like one for Pac-Man World coming up. I still need to slap a score on Saints Row. Whatever else I'm going through.
That game,
oh
man.
Yeah. Just look at Prima. That's where I write. That's all I've got going on right now. Maybe more in the future, but that's where I'm at.
Oh, it's my turn. I'm Jesse Vitelli. I'm a Libra. I like long walks on the beach. No, you can
Sure,
find
you
my
do.
writing at
That's- yeah.
primagames.com. I hate the beach. You can find me on Twitter at Jesse Vitelli. No
Beach
beach
sucks.
hater. All my homies hate the beach.
Jesse Vitelli. You have to put that in your title.
There is
now.
so
No.
little melanin in this conversation right now. I can't imagine anyone enjoys being in the sun for a long time.
Things I've got coming up. I don't really think I have anything coming up. I think this is like the one time where I'm just like, I got nothing, and it kind of feels good. I'm like going to Chicago next weekend. It's gonna be great. You don't need to hear about that, but like I'm going.
Nice.
Yeah, I got nothing in the pipeline. We're just working, on video games, playing some Splatoon 3, just vibing.
Nice. That's where you can catch at least 3.
That's where you can catch these hands. Splatoon, my octoling tentacles.
Catch these tentacles.
Love it.
Well, thank you both again for joining us. This is wonderful. We'll definitely have to have you back to talk more. Maybe we'll just have to do a Splatoon franchise retrospective and have you.
Oh, then I gotta get my Wii U out
Important, yeah.
Talk about the great.
for Splatoon 1. All
Yeah,
my
I've never
homies
played
hate
the
the
first
Wii
one,
U.
famously, so I've only played 2 and 3.
Yeah, no, the Wii U is great.
I love the Wii U.
That's a podcast episode.
Thing rules.
The Wii U actually good though.
Yeah.
Talking about how great the Wii.
Whoa, whoa.
In
Yeah,
defense of
let's
the
go.
Wii U.
We'll have to do that. I'll have to step out of that one as I've never owned or played.
Just
a
come
Wii
over.
U.
I'll
I've played
hook up
the
my Wii U.
a few
It's
times,
behind
but
me.
I've
We're
never
good.
owned one.
Yeah.
We'll hang out.
You can
right,
come
great.
at it as the outsider, be like, all right, no, explain this to me. Really, what?
Let me tell you about the Wii U Virtual Console.
Let me tell you about Tokyo Mirage.
Oh, that's on
Sessions.
Switch, isn't it?
Hell, let me tell you about Nintendo Land. Start from the beginning. But if nothing else,
Oh,
Let
there
me
you
tell you
go.
about Zombie U.
Amazing.
oh Jesus, the Mass Effect 3 on the Wii U.
Oh, and the Batman. What was it
Arkham Origins.
Arkham Origins.
Arkham Origins.
Armored
That's how we played it
Edition.
in this house. We played it on the Wii U, and it was great.
Armor Edition.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, if nothing else, look at the names in the byline of who writes these guides. A lot of people make a lot of cool content, and sometimes you can find favorites in that, and you can find the personality of the writers in, just as in finding creators of games, the creators of guides. This is an ongoing piece of gaming culture, and, in many ways, a necessary one. And do any of you have favorite guides, favorite writers, favorite things that you look for? Where did you feel the most like a fool looking up something in a guide? If I rack my brain, I'm sure I can embarrass myself more than most folks, as there's definitely been some embarrassing times, but we want to hear about all of that from you. You can reach us in so many different ways. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at funandgamespod. You can email us at funandgamespod@gmail.com. You can also go to certainpov.com, where you'll find not only a permanent invite link to our Discord server, but also a plethora of incredible, nerdy Certain POV podcasts.
Yeah, please check out all of the other shows. Jesse's been a guest on Reignite, which is my Mass Effect podcast that I've been doing for what seems like too long and forever, and yet I still love doing it. We have tons of different podcasts about comic books, regular books, TV, movies, all sorts of stuff. Also, if you have a chance, please give us a rating and a review on Apple Pods. First and foremost, it helps us a ton to grow the audience, but also on Good Pods, on Spotify, on Amazon Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you can get a podcast. If there's a review option, please give us a rating and a review. We appreciate it. And we appreciate all of you for coming on this ride with us. Please reach out to us on those platforms Geoff mentioned. Thank you for being along for the ride and joining us here and in the future.
Yeah, thank you for answering all of the silly questions that we put out into the world. Thank you for sharing your love of games, your weird corners and wild memories. And I want to know, what retro game would you drop everything to write a guide for? Damn it, I had a good one, but I completely forgot. But that's fine. I'll think of it later and we can talk about it, because you know what? It doesn't stop here. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen,
And I'm at AK Stormageddon.
and happy gaming.
Have you ever sat on a long commute or a dull day in the office and let your mind wander back to the days of rectangle pizza, bowls and bowls of sugar cereal, and gushing over your favorite cartoons and movies in school, and worry that those favorites from childhood won't hold up today? Well, the Saturday Morning Confidential podcast answers those questions for you. Host Maddie Limerick sits down with artists and creators of today to pull back the veil of nostalgia to talk about what's great and what we would change in hindsight years later. So pull on your comfiest PJs, pour yourself a bowl of your favorite cereal, and take a deep dive into the files of Saturday Morning Confidential. Releasing bi-weekly on Saturdays, available on your favorite podcast platforms and at certainpov.com.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.